last sort of week or so of the activity in Los Angeles since the beginning of the administration, then just imagine what can happen to anybody in the country. For that matter.
First question, how are you? We all watched the video. We saw you taken to the floor by those agents. How are you doing?
Yeah, look, I'm okay. I've been on the phone off and on with kids, right? Because my kids, word travels fast in this day and age with technology to make sure they're okay. But I think most importantly is the outrage that I hope people feel. If this can happen to a United States senator for having the audacity to ask a question of the Secretary of Homeland Security, the same questions for and requests for information that we've had, not just the last sort of week or so of the activity in Los Angeles, but since the beginning of the administration, then just imagine what can happen to anybody in the country, for that matter.
We heard from you briefly at the press conference after you came outside of the federal building in Westwood. We've heard more extensively from Secretary Noem and the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to just tell you a little bit because I'm sure this has been a whirlwind about what they've been saying. Secretary Noem said that you, quote, lunged towards her at this press conference. The Department of Homeland Security said the Secret Service believed that you were an attacker. And the Department of Homeland Security called this political theater. What's your response and what's your version of what happened?
Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. It's a lie, but par for the course for this administration, right? So here's the stage. Look, I was in the federal building here in Los Angeles for a scheduled briefing. Just as when my colleagues and I had to go all the way to Guantanamo Bay to begin to get information about that facility being used as a detention facility, they've been non-responsive to requests for information. And so I had scheduled, they approved, a briefing with representatives of the Northern Command in that federal building. We were there prior to the 10:30 original appointment date when we caught wind that Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be down the hall at a press conference. And our briefing was now delayed because of that press conference. So since the secretary has been non-responsive, I figured let me go over and listen to what she has to say. Maybe we can glean some information here.
So let me make sure I understand that.
The whole time, right? We're the whole time being escorted in this federal building by somebody from the National Guard, somebody from the FBI. I've gone through screening. This is a federal building. And so tell them, let's go listen to the press conference. They escort me over to that room. And I'm sitting in the back of the room behind the cameras, behind the reporters, listening. And at one point, it was just too much to take. Not the first, but the second attack on the political leadership of California and this notion that Donald Trump and Kristi Noem had to come in and rescue the people of Los Angeles from Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. It was too much. And so I spoke up. I introduced myself. And said I had a question. Look, they said I wasn't wearing my pin. My polo says United States Senate. There was no threat. There was no lunging. I raised my voice to ask a question, and it took, maybe half a second before multiple agents were on me.